Welcome one and all. It's time for yet another red hot, spicy, tingling, sizzling, finger-licking good Kings of War tournament report. Now, rather than being a full-on mega tournament, this was a small charity-based event. So, Gamers for Life, the event, run in Nottingham at the Leadbelt Games Arena, and raising money for Nottinghamshire Hospice, which I've linked in the video description, by the way, if you'd feel like donating them some money. So there was a Kings of War event, a Dead Zone event, and a Dreadball event, all going on at the same time. So not that many players for each, but overall, nice number of people there. So, Kings of War, 3 games, 2,000 points, and because it's unranked and because it's for charity, why not bring some more interesting stuff? So I decided to try out a few different Nightstalker options and just have a bit of a laugh and test some things out. So let's see what I've gone with in my list. So the one thing I wanted to try out was the triple Ravager Horde and Essenishra, the Wailing Shadow. So the combo being that there are these 3 units that have a good shooting attack, but it's short range. So you use her, this like super banshee, to enthrall the enemy into range so you can shoot them if they're sitting just outside of your range. So against certain armies, potentially very effective. I'm thinking the likes of, let's say, ogres with ogre chariots, who would normally sit within their own charge range, but just outside of yours, perhaps, knowing that as soon as you want to close the distance on them, then they'll be able to charge you. But if you're able to pull one of those units forward and break the lines and then shoot just that one, then perhaps something to be said for that. Any slow armies where you can manipulate them by pushing and pulling, of course. Faster armies, it's less likely you'll be able to do anything like that, any of those shenanigans, because they'll be able to hover further away in the first place, and it's only enthrall 7 on average. You're only going to pull them 3 or 4 inches anyway. But she does have other utility as well, because if you successfully pull a unit into contact with her, then you can start fighting them immediately. So, other than that, let me just get the old big orange arrow on the screen there. So there's the Super Banshee, and there are the 3 hordes. You can see they've got a bit of paper on them, pointing out which upgrades I've given them, because I had some points left over, and I'd already upgraded most of the other units. So I've put fire oil then on this one. So anything with regeneration, they get extra piercing and crushing strength. This one over here has got pipes of terror for a bit of brutal, because they are going to get into combat anyway. When you look at the rest of the list, there's not that much fighty stuff. And this one over here has got the staying stone to survive a little bit better. Then we've got Horde of Scarecrows. No bloodworms in this list, no mind screeches, so none of the usual stuff that you would see in a Nightstalker filth list. Then, for the first time, trying out the Shadowhounds Regiment, and what they've done with the Shadowhounds, it's actually now worth upgrading them when you take the regiment, because you've got 20 attacks. When they make an unhindered charge, then they're on 3s to hit, with Thunderous Charge 1. So suddenly, tempting to put upgrades on them. So I've given them Helm of the Drunken Ram, so they've got Thunderous Charge 2, because the whole idea is that you want to get unhindered charges anyway, so why not double down on that and give them Thunderous Charge 2 instead of 1. The downside to these guys is that you can't ever give them Pathfinder or Strider through auras or artifacts or whatever. They can just never benefit from those rules because of their, what's it even called? Ferocious Charge, there we go. So, speed 10, nimble cavalry unit that now hits very hard, so they're quite scary. We have also got Soul Flayers, 1 regiment. When I initially made the list, I had more Soul Flayers in there because I wanted to go for the pull them into range with the Banshee, shoot them to death, almost to death, and then wind blast them away with Soul Flayers. But when I've made the list, I realised I didn't have enough Titans in it, and I wanted to have multiple Titans, so Soul Flayers dropped. There's only 1 unit in there, and they've got the Blade of Slashing, just with some leftover points, which is always handy for them because they don't have that many attacks. We have got the Terror, so this is not a Shadow Hulk, this is being used as the Terror, which is pretty fitting anyway, because the front of the Terror looks way more like this, with tentacles everywhere. So the Terror, what's the lowdown on that creature? Well, only crushing strength 1, but it's got a load of other special rules. It's got Ensnare, it's got Rampage 8, so if I can find some nice juicy infantry to fight, it's going up to 20 attacks on 3s, which is nice. It's got Regeneration 4+, and it has Strider. So Ensnare, very handy for keeping it alive, obviously, and regenerating a lot of its wounds. It's been improved drastically. The old Terror used to be defense 3, so even the regeneration didn't save it a lot of the time. And we've also got a Void Lurker, who has Dwarven Ale, again with some leftover points, just in case it happens to get wavered. And it's a big, typical flyer, except only defense 4. So, it does have regeneration though, which I'm sure I forget to roll at some point during these games. So we've also got the Portal of Despair there as well, who gives Inspiring to one of my units per turn when I remember to do it, and also it's just a bit of a roadblock. So, moving on to the next image. More images of my army, of course. And this is the army I'm facing in the first round. So, Forces of Nature, a horde of Naiad Ensnarers with Hammer of Measured Force, which isn't going to help them too much against my list because I've got mostly defense 4, and some units even less, in fact, than 4. 2 hordes of Water Elementals. So, of all the different kinds of Elementals, what do the Water ones have going for them? Well, they've got Regeneration, Pushing Strength 1, and Defense 5. So, those are the kind of things that they switch out between them. I think Fire Elementals have more crushing strength, possibly. They don't have regeneration, though. And then Earth Elementals have got defense 6, and Air Elementals are faster, but they don't have the hitting power, and the lower defense as well they have. So all the Elementals quite different. 2 troops of Centaur Bray Hunters, and they're just crummy little cavalry unit with bows. Obviously a little bit of Thunderous Charge being cavalry, so if you can get a flank with them, may be useful in combat. Centaur Bray Striders, so this is the slightly hittier, fighty cavalry unit with Crushing Strength and Thunderous, and 12 attacks. Hitting on 3s, so not bad. Greater Water Elemental, so what's this got going for it? We've still got regen, but it's 4+ now on this one, and Crushing Strength 2, so that's looking like quite a survivable creature. Got a Pegasus, which is just really cheap, not really that great at anything though. Just a cheap bit of a chaff unit monster. A Hydra, which my opponent was really talking up the fact that the Hydra is terrible and never sees any play before the game, but looking at its stats, it's actually not bad. It's got Crushing Strength 2, with only 5 attacks, but the attacks go up the more damage it's taken. So as it gets closer to death, it becomes more dangerous, obviously, as long as it doesn't die. It also has Pathfinder as well. So for only 150 points, that looks pretty damn good, actually. Pretty tasty. Then we've got the Naiad Stalker with Gnome Glass Shield. So just a hero that, if you want to deal with, it's going to be really annoying to deal with in one. So you may have to go after it twice, which just makes it kind of annoying. Ensnare as well. So Ensnare and Defense 6 the first time you hit it, which is going to be irritating, with Regeneration 4. So the kind of thing you'd probably start leaving alone rather than chasing after. And a Druid with Surge 8. So that can obviously surge all the elementals and bark skin. And Tree Herder. So Tree Herder also has Surge 8. So 16 Surge potential, but the Tree Herder is generally the kind of thing you want to be fighting as well. Crushing Strength 3, 9 attacks on 3s. Radiance of Life, Scout, Strider, Iron Resolve, just all kinds of spells piled up on it. All kinds of different rules, should I say. So, there is the Forces of Nature. And here is the layout. The first scenario is push. So, what is my plan here? Because we've got these 2 big pieces of terrain. This is a big impassable thing, including the whole area of the base, and then this big impassable barn as well. We've got 2 very low hills, which I don't mind them being low, because in game terms the height is the same as a normal hill, it's just easier to put your units on them. And then we've got two very barren looking woods here and a couple of difficult terrain patches, and there are some hedges around the place as well. So I've got all my Ravagers together because they want to combine their fire on something. And I've got the special Banshee down there, the Wailing Shadow to maybe pull someone into range to be shot to bits. I've got the Void Lurker behind them, ready to strike at something. And then we've got the doggos over here. I had to find a place to put them where they're definitely not going to be charging into difficult terrain, and this seemed like a good spot. So anything that wants to get on that hill is going to be threatened by dog attack. The only source of inspiring I have is the Portal of Despair when it issues it to one of my units. By the way, if anyone's watching this live, feel free to comment, and don't forget to like the video, unless you're especially cruel. We've got the Soul Flayers right here, because I wasn't sure which way to send the Soul Flayers. That's why they're parked in the middle to begin with. I want to see what my opponent does first before I commit to which side to send them. Over on this side we've got the Portal of Despair, the Terror, and the Scarecrows. The Scarecrows are carrying all three of my tokens. On this side my opponent has got the Hydra, one chaff unit of cavalry, the Pegasus, and a hero. So, I think that these three units are a decent match for that lot. Portal of Despair isn't really anything combat-wise, but the Terror's pretty good in combat, and the Scarecrows have got a good amount of nerve. So, I'm feeling pretty good about this side of the table. On this side, the Ensnarers are behind the units with all the tokens, and there are the Water Elementals and the Greater one there. And the hard-hitting cavalry are in the centre with the Tree Herder. So, I would very much like to not be hit by the cavalry too much. They're a big threat. I've got the speed advantage on many of the units with my dogs and my Void Lurker. There's a flyer there. So it's not a hugely fast opposing army. It has got cavalry that are faster than my infantry and large infantry, of course. But we shall see. There's a nice big open area here. And if the enemy want to come into it and get shot, that's going to be fine with me. And I think I've got a solid enough centre here with these three, backed up by the units, that I can probably try and get that token. We'll see, because obviously cavalry don't want to be picking it up, and even the Tree Herder, would you want that to be picking up the token? Maybe he could be a choice for it. Turn one, so let's see, going first, there is not much here. I think my opponent won the roll-off and gave me the first turn. In this event, there are no turn 7s, by the way, so if you choose to go second, not only do you know when the game's going to end, you know that your turn is going to be the end at that precise moment. So in some scenarios, that's really good because you know that you're going to be able to jump onto territories or objectives with the final turn of the game with no chance of there being a further turn. In push, not quite as big of a deal as in, let's say, control, which is a very big deal going last in that one, because you can see where the enemy has their unit strength and then kind of dance between the different sections. So push, not as big a deal. So I've started moving up. I've moved up quite heavily on this side with the Scarecrows, trying to get the tokens as close to the centre line or over it as possible. And they've got a little way to go yet. And on this side I'm not pushing up quite as much. I want the enemy to come to me over here and then I can start shooting them. So at this point, I haven't really moved the Soul Flayers because I'm still not sure where I'm sending them. I didn't want to commit the Void Lurker over on this side because I don't think it's necessary against that lot. So I'm thinking the Soul Flayers might go that way. But if you look, some of the enemy units here, the Pegasus, for example, might fly off. Fast cavalry don't necessarily have to stay here. So the more stuff I have committed over here, the more there is the enemy to just flee from and leave it kind of stranded over here. So I don't want to overload this flank and then end up with not enough to contest the middle. I'd get the Scarecrows across easily if there's nothing over there, obviously, but I want some meat in the centre. Turn one for my opponent. So, pushing up. Most of the things not fully on the hill, but many of them are touching it. The only things that can really see over the hill in this game are the Titans and the Soul Flayers. And look at that laser action on human hand there. And yeah, so the Pegasus has gone out of the arc of sight of the Portal of Despair, even though they're not really a big threat to each other, those two. If they were to be in combat, they could well be hitting each other for the whole game without anyone dying. And these two units, I am more concerned about those two than anything else. Probably. There's a lot of crushing strength on this guy. This blob here, it's not as fast, this stuff. It's not slow, but I can get the first hit in if I want to with flyers or the dogs on all of this stuff here. So, what is... Oh, you can see the bark skin has been put on the cavalry as well, because I would quite like to hit the cavalry. And a little bit of damage is fired onto the Portal of Despair, who is a viable target because it's the only thing in the list that isn't stealthy. And 1 wound onto the Terror. So, what am I going to do here? You may not be able to predict my next move, but what I actually was thinking about was moving the Wailing Shadow up around here somewhere, pulling that chaff unit out of the way, and then firing all 3 of the Ravager hordes into the water elementals, combined with the Void Lurker charging into the knights to pin them. Now, you might think that that's crazy use of a Void Lurker because it's expensive, throwing it in there, but I actually thought as well, I don't want to be pinned in a straight line back here, because the enemy are then going to have first chance at the middle token, and they're also going to be able to dance these guys across the line with 3 objectives as well. I don't want to be fighting on this line. Where I want to be fighting is here, where the enemy are now. The only way I can enforce that is with the Void Lurker. So I'm going to have to charge something now, pin them back in that spot, and then push up and try and kill things as I go, and then end up fighting more where I want to fight, which is there. So we're fighting on the centre line, and either I have the objectives or my opponent does. They're not going to be fully in my half with them, and the Scarecrows have got a decent chance of getting in there. You can see, by the way, the cavalry have moved over to the flank, because they can start moving up looking for flank charges. I'm not too concerned about them at this stage, though. Turn 2 for me, and you can see the Void Lurker did go into the cavalry, but didn't kill them. It shouldn't actually be that far back. That's just the only way it'll fit near them. And you can see that I went for the move that I was talking about there, pulling this unit, who she can see because he should actually be further forward. So the Banshee enthralls the cavalry over to this side a little bit so that I could blast away at them. And I've pushed all these guys up, staying together, just waiting to see if anyone wants to charge. Now, this is not an optimal positioning for these 3 units here. So, what I have left available to the enemy is a charge with the Hydra into the Scarecrows, which is fine. That's obviously not going to kill them in 1 round, but I haven't angled these 2 enough so that they would be able to see a single Hydra in the middle of the Scarecrows. So that's potentially a mistake. Void Lurker does 6 damage to the cavalry, which is okay, and I'm more than happy to sacrifice it to get the battle fought on my terms. I do 6 wounds to both these units with my shooting, but can't get rid of them, unfortunately. So it's a good start, but they can get their wounds back, which is annoying. But I'd like to have killed them, obviously. And so, how's my position looking? The Pegasus doesn't have anything to charge because I've got these 3 units lined up, so they're protecting each other's flanks. The dogs are out of range and sight. I've put the Soul Flayers out of sight. I've committed the Soul Flayers to this side now, because I think that side's going to be fine. It's only really a Hydra over there that's any kind of threat, so I'm okay with this. Soul Flayers come this way, so they can start looking for anything that's moving in down here. And I don't think I'm in range of everything up there, but certainly some of it can go in. These guys certainly can. I don't think those 2, or that unit at the back there, that horde, definitely can't see this unit past the hill, as far as I recall. And I don't think these guys are in range. So we do have the Hydra into the Scarecrows, who sadly can't be seen by either of these right now. And the cavalry head out onto the flank there, which again I'm not overly concerned about yet. And the Pegasus decides the best thing it can do is just park in front of the Ravagers, which is Perfectly valid. The tree herder goes into the flank of the void lurker. So, throwing the void lurker away, am I still happy to do it? Yes, because I was able to push these guys up as a result. But what would have been better, actually, would have been planning in advance that I was going to do this kind of manoeuvre and use the soul flayers for that instead. But because they were further back, because I hadn't decided where to send them yet, then they couldn't do the job. But if they'd been in position to do that, they also have shorter range on their flying, so whether they'd have even been able to reach that spot is another matter. But these guys are all in position now, so we'll see how many of them get charged and how many of them are going to be left open to then countercharge these units here. So the Pegasus is just blocking up as many as it can, and the rest of these units are getting themselves either on the hill or in a position to see. Hydra's not going to do much. There's going to be a little bit of shooting, I think, that goes in, but not a huge amount. And yeah, little bits of damage being dished out here and there. Not much. And the Void Lurker gets killed. So it was actually very, very close to not dying. And had I remembered to issue my Inspiring with the Portal of Despair last turn, which I just totally forgot, I would have probably put it on someone that inspires. And actually, I'm not sure, does the Tree Herder inspire? I don't feel like he does. So maybe, but I don't think he does. So not inspired, and you can see it's a lot of wounds were done, but having 2 chances at it makes it more likely to live, obviously. So we've got the front has been laid out now, and I've kind of got what I wanted from that move. I've got the fight taking place along this line. So I had to sacrifice an expensive unit to do it, but that was more a deployment issue rather than strategic at this point. So what I'm going to do is charge in and try and finish off those cavalry there, because they're already close to death. To do that, I'm going to use 1 unit of Ravagers and probably the Wailing Shadow. Why charge them? Why not shoot? Well, if you shoot them and they don't die, they still have their Thunderous Charge, which is bad. And if I don't move up and charge in, then that's kind of defeated the purpose of throwing in the Void Lurker, because I want to fight here. That's the whole reason it went in there. So these 2 are going to go in there. This unit and the dogs may well go for the Ensnarers right now. Maybe they'll go in there. And a nice upside down picture. So let's see what I do on turn 3. So I do decide I'm going to throw in 2 units into the Ensnarers. Obviously going into an ensnaring front of a unit with Ensnare, so you're going to be -1 to hit, but I feel like I've got to chewing through them, should I say. And I only just noticed at this point, because I totally missed my opponent doing it in the previous round, during the game, not just the video, the tokens were deposited and then picked up by the water elementals, which means they obviously they can't be surged while carrying it, but if these guys are going to go on the front line and die, then you don't want them carrying tokens. But it is pushing the tokens further back away from my half. So, and you can see that these Ravagers and the Wailing Shadow do take out the Knights. So we've got some compensation there. Over here, 13 damage to the Ensnarer Horde, but can't quite get enough to kill them. And the Soul Flayers throw themselves into the Water Elementals because they want to protect these units here. So let me show you where they were. Soul Flayers were down here, so they go into that unit. And then the Pegasus is killed by the other Ravagers. So these guys turn around to face the Tree Lord, or the Tree Herder, should I say. And Scarecrows don't do much to the Hydra, but I position the other units. Charge the Portal of Despair into the little infantry hero, but do nothing. And the Terror totally ignores the cavalry and just turns its flank to them, so I can have a go at the Hydra next time. Unless I get killed somehow. So there's the overview, and as you can see, I've got the front that I wanted. The battle is now taking place along the line. But was the sacrifice to get that too great? We shall find out shortly. Turn 3 for the evil, evil forces of nature. So we've got a double charge going in on the Terror here. This character is not mighty, so he has to do a wound in order to stop the Terror from charging through into the flank of the Hydra. And a nice upside down picture showing you that this horde has countercharged the doggos, and the greater elemental has flown, not flown, but moved past them, and it's then going to be surged into these Ravagers. And the Soul Flayers are getting what they expected, which is elementals in the front and cavalry, chaff cavalry in the flank. We've got the Tree Herder into the Ravagers, which I'm okay with because he's still in range of the other one. My opponent actually spent quite a while deciding whether this was the best thing to do with him. Obviously presenting a rear charge to the other Ravagers, but he wasn't in the wildest position that you would want to have him in, really. He had a lot of stuff looking at him, so might as well do something with him. Even if you get out of my line of sight with him, they can just both turn around and shoot him anyway. So, not the best situation for him. And let's see if anything gets killed this turn. So, the dogs, more bark skin has been applied to them, and look at all the regeneration they've done. Back to 3 wounds, so obscene there. And some damage is being dished out onto my units, but not a lot, and crucially, this character does not wound the Terror, so I'm going to be able to charge straight through it into the Hydra. The dogs take a little bit of damage, but not much. But because they regenerated 9 wounds, then I know I'm not going to win this fight now, so that's kind of annoying. And the Ravagers take some damage from the Elemental, and the Soul Flayers are dead, as expected, but that's the only casualty there, so I'm okay with this. And this guy only does 2 wounds to the Ravagers there. So what am I going to do here? These guys are going to go in the rear of the Tree Herder. So front, rear, lots and lots of attacks. And the Wailing Shadow is going to try and pick up this Chaff unit because they're already on 4 wounds. I'm going to be able to countercharge with the dogs here and the Ravagers there. And up on that side, I'm going to flank charge the Hydra. So that should be enough to take him out. And then I can turn and face the cavalry threats. There's nothing else threatening over here. There's just an individual hero. So this side should be locked down, assuming that goes according to plan. So, turn 4 for me. Into the flank. But what's this? Roll woefully badly and only get him up to 8 wounds and don't kill him. Wow, wow, wow. That's in spite of the dread of the Portal of Despair being right there as well. I was still 1 off killing it on the nerve roll because of the just mediocre damage that I did to it. So very disappointing there. So that has now presented a rear charge to the cavalry. And obviously had the Hydra died, both units would just turn around to face this way, and I think this area would be very much locked down now. And pretty much flank over, I would say. As it is now, it's looking not the healthiest because these two can potentially rear charge him. Hydra can go back in there, and Scarecrows versus Hydra, War of Attrition, I don't like the sound of it. He's got regeneration, and he does more wounds when you do more wounds to him as well. He gets more attacks. So, you can see here that the Tree Herder did get killed by the 2 Ravager hordes, which is nice. And just lots of counter-charging going on up there, but nothing killed. Just little bits of damage or very little to none done in some of those fights. So the middle is looking okay with these 2 on barely any damage. This flank not looking great after that good regeneration from the Ensnarers, and then I'm left with just these 2 against these 4 good units there. So, turn 4 for the nature. Dogs are being attacked again. The Ravagers are being hit from multiple sides. The Terror is being hit by various things, including the Hydra actually, who goes into the front, despite the Ensnare, chooses to go for the front, rather than just relying on the rear charges, hoping to just add an extra couple of wounds. And they do it though, they kill it. So, wow, wow, wow. And what else dies here? So the Ravager unit that was here gets killed as well. And the dogs are wavered. So this is the situation we're looking at now. And it's not looking quite as healthy, but what I'm going to do is back up these guys onto the token, pick it up, and then use these 2 to blast away and try and kill off this unit with shooting. Dogs are stuck. Let's see, I think the Wailing Shadow got killed as well, somehow. Oh yeah, because I forgot to issue Inspiring to any of my units again. So, had I done so, I would have probably put it onto this unit, because there would have been 3 units covered by Inspiring then. And the Wailing Shadow was killed as a result of not being inspired, despite only taking minimal damage. So I'm not sure if it was just a 1 wound taken and then a roll of 12 that killed her, because that would be enough. So it could well have been that. And she didn't get another go at it because of Inspiring. So she may have taken another wound though. On to turn 5 for me. So, what am I going to do here? Well, shoot off those elementals. I was hoping they would have been dead earlier than this. Oh no, the Wailing Shadow is still alive. I just lied. She's right there. They didn't even attack her. So, what happened is, she charged into them the previous turn. I just totally forgot, because she just looks like a bit of horsehair or something. Did some damage to them, but didn't kill them, and she's just waiting there now. They don't go after her because they were wavered. So, getting ahead of myself, because she does get killed with a high roll at some point, but it's not just then. So, over here, not much is accomplished on the Hydra. Portal of Despair just turns around to face that area. And the Wailing Shadow charges into them. So I'm not going to have too much coming at me this turn, only these 2 units. And the tokens are still on this unit here, which I'm very happy with because it means that they're not in my half. So as far as push is concerned, I'm currently in the lead. So on my turn, Scarecrows. 1 last chance to try and kill the Hydra. If they don't kill it now, they will die. And they didn't kill it, as you saw. So, charged in the flank. The Wailing Shadow gets hit by the Elementals. And the Doggos get killed this time. The Wailing Shadow takes some wounds. The Ravagers take some wounds from the Cavalry, but they're still holding strong with that token. And a nice blockage there. So the tokens are still trapped on the enemy half, but the Scarecrows get killed now, and the tokens are stolen, so game over. So yeah, this flank was critical to the game, because I needed them to live, and they haven't, so now I've got nothing to chase down this unit with, who are just going to move into my half with the tokens, and that is the end of the game, essentially, but we're going to see who gets kill points, because that is an issue for tournament scoring as well. So, turn 6 for me, let's see who I can kill. Kill off those Cavalry. Don't kill the big elemental. The Portal of Despair doesn't kill anything. Turn 6 for the enemy. Double charging, trying to take out the Ravagers. And the Portal of Despair. And they do kill some of it, but not all. They don't kill the Portal or the Ravager Horde in the middle. But obviously they are going to win. And that's the end of that game. So, what went wrong? Well, I think maybe I could have committed another unit onto this flank. Looking at how important it was, I probably should have just focused on this area here, because the enemy had so much strong stuff over here that I didn't want to fight. I could have just loaded up the middle and just used blocking units kind of along that battle that I started there. Should have probably used the Soul Flayers in the role that the Void Lurker was used for, but that's just the position he found himself in while I came up with that strategy based on where the opponent's army was positioned, because they hadn't come as far forward as I thought they might in push. So I thought it was worth the sacrifice to get the battle fought on my terms. And it kind of worked, because I was able to kill some units around here, and I got these Ravagers onto the objective, which was the whole point of fighting there. And I stopped these guys getting into my half, which was the other point of it as well. So that side of it just worked fine. So the Void Lurker sacrifice wasn't particularly in vain. However, this side didn't have enough support. Maybe I could have positioned them slightly differently so that I would have had a more chance of charging the Hydra earlier. But even when I did get into its flank, I'd failed to kill it with the Terror anyway. So, wow. On to Game 2. And what are we facing here? Well, I didn't take a picture of the list because I forgot, but it is Forces of the Abyss. We have 10 Tortured Souls regiments. That is right, you heard 10 regiments of Tortured Souls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 10 flying units that hit reasonably hard. Not hugely, because they don't have that number of attacks. They've only got 9 attacks hitting on 4s, but they do have Crush 1, Thunderous 1, I think. So, potentially scary, you don't want to get flanked by them. So, how have I tried to counter that? in dominate scenario? Well, I've spread out across the whole table because I don't want tortured souls getting in my flank. I don't want them being able to threaten my flank, because if 2 of them were to get round the side, I would then have to start turning things around to look at them, and then there's 8 more units that way, so they'd get the flank. So just no, I'm not having any flanks. We're just going to cover the whole width of the table instead. So that is my plan, but with it being dominate, of course, I've got my big unit strength units in the middle, and then I'm using the lower unit strength stuff out on the flanks. So what else have we got? There are 2 regiments of Abyssal Horsemen and 2 troops of Gargoyles. So, am I confident? Not at all, because there's so many units there that can all fight, and I don't have that many fighty units. Just everything is fast, and a lot of my abilities that I've paid points for aren't going to be very useful in this matchup. Enthrall isn't really going to help me because the enemy don't need to camp that close to me, and even if I can pull 1 regiment of tortured souls into range and blast them off the table, there's still 9 more to go that would then hit me. So they can just afford to sit behind each other, throw 1 in, do some damage, it dies, throw another 1 in, kill. Yeah, so they can afford to trade at a much higher rate than I can. So my fighty units, I've got the Ravagers, who aren't that great, and the Terror and the Soul Flayers. Void Lurker is a very expensive fighter unit, and the Dogs. So, kind of outmatched in terms of number of units, in number of hitty units, and in unit strength for the dominate scenario. So, we'll give it a go though. Let's see what I've got up my sleeve here. So there's also a hero on foot as well. So, dominate. My opponent goes first and throws everything forward, with the Gargoyles shielding the cavalry. I don't have a lot of chaff, and I do have shooting, of course, but if you shoot Gargoyles in front of cavalry, you then get hit by the cavalry. Either of those cavalry units can kill a horde of Ravagers in 1 round, probably. So, wouldn't like to be charged by them, but it may end up happening. What I want to do is charge these Gargoyles with the Wailing Shadow and waver them, because then they're stuck in place and the knights are trapped behind them. That's the plan. And the enemy aren't enveloping me because they're worried about the dogs on my left flank, which is good, so I'm pleased about that, because if I was bunched up on one side, they would start to like form this sort of shape around me, which isn't great, and you can only do that in the corner as well with this number of units. If I'd done it in the centre, it would be more like that shape. I'd get totally encircled and then killed. And dominate as well, I would really have to do it in the middle, so not viable for me, I think. Turn 1, so I've got to start killing things immediately. I can't leave things alive when I hit them. So Void Lurker is going to go and hit that unit there, because there's the least amount of units coming back at me as a result of that. I think it's only maybe this one would then be able to see the Void Lurker. So taking the risk, got to try and kill things. Let's kill that one with the Void Lurker. Let's start shooting other things. Let's charge into the Gargoyles. Let's just get kills on the board. So 1 dead. And I choose not to overrun because it takes the Void Lurker out the game for a while. And if I do overrun, these 2 would just turn and look at me. And then what am I going to do next turn? Turn around and look at them and get double charged? I don't think so. So I'm just going to stare at that one. They can charge me if they want. If they don't, then I'm free to just charge flanks. So 1 unit down. Esenithra does manage to kill the Gargoyles and then overruns and blocks up the knights, so it has the same effect of blocking them, but I would rather they just weren't able to fight. And I have also done some shooting, and I've done 5 wounds to that unit there. I think I shot the knights as well, but didn't kill them. So 5 wounds onto these. So what's going to happen now? Well, Gargoyles are probably going to charge and block something. These knights can charge these Ravagers. These knights are trapped. These tortured souls can hit things, certainly. Let's see. So we've got 2 tortured souls into these ones here, so it's these 2 units go into there. We've got knights and gargoyles into the other Ravagers there. We've got this little hero into the soul flayers who'd positioned on the hedge to discourage anyone from charging them, but really just want to do 1 wound to them to stop them charging over you. And this unit of tortured souls gets into the back unit of Ravagers. which I'm not, even though it's blocking them up, I'm not wildly displeased that they're all throwing themselves into combat, because I need to kill them fast to get that unit strength down for scenario purposes more than anything. So every time one of them is in a one-on-one engagement with my unit, overall I think I'm going to win against each one. When they're 2-on-1, not so much, but here I should be able to beat them. So some damage done to the Soul Flayers there, so they're not going to be flying. Damage done to the Void Lurker. And the Portal of Despair, who also gets double charged. So the Void Lurker, I think I forgot to roll its regeneration for either all of the game or most of it. So keeping track of which units have regeneration, which ones have Ensnare, which ones have Dread. Quite complicated when you're trying out some new units. And the Ravagers there are killed because the Knights are just good. And the Gargoyles face that way, the Knights face forwards. I think they overrun actually because they want to come and get some flanking action. A couple of points of damage onto these ones, and 5 damage onto them. So, how's my confidence level now? Still about the same. Still don't think I'm going to win. I think it's a good list I'm up against here. Maybe not up against everything, it wouldn't necessarily be good, but against my army I think it's quite solid here. Oh, you can also see that the Wailing Shadow took 4... Okay, this is the time. I think I inadvertently credited the first game as being the cause of this incident. So she took 4 wounds and then died and wasn't inspired. So obviously, with the way the battlefield is set up here, I would have wanted something to be inspired if I'd remembered that was a thing I could do. So I would probably put it on, if we go back and see how it was looking before that turn. Where would I put my inspiring this turn? Would I stick it on them, so that all these would have inspiring on them? That seems like the wisest choice, because all the others are only really going to be inspiring themselves. So probably this unit, so she would have been inspired, and maybe she would have survived the requirement of a 9 on the nerve check if a second roll was required. But, forgot to do it, she's dead. And turn 2 for me. So, the Void Lurker eats another unit of Tortured Souls, which is good. I think I did, looks like I did the regen this turn. I think after this I forgot to do it. So, eating more souls, which is great. The Soul Flayers do a bit of damage to this hero. Portal of Despair does 1 wound, but it's not there to fight. The Ravagers kill the Tortured Souls that charge them, so that's good. Got rid of another unit. And really, if they hadn't gone into me, this unit wouldn't have been able to do much in the turn. So I felt that it was good that that unit just put themselves there as a tasty snack. Tortured Souls unit dead there. Scarecrows don't do enough to kill this one. And there we go. So I'm deleting units, but so is my opponent. Whenever things get hit, they are dying. If there was any chance at all of them dying so far, they're doing a pretty good job at dying. And what's going to happen now? Turn 3 for the evil, evil Abyss forces. We've got Knights into Ravagers. We've got the Tortured Souls back into the Scarecrows. So I'd expect them to kill that unit because they're Knights and they're just good. Soul Flayers get double hit by this unit and another Tortured Souls unit. It's just endless Tortured Souls. And these Knights working their way around that way. The Gargoyles charge the Ravagers as well. And more Tortured Souls. It just never ends. It's a never-ending tide of souls. So you'll actually see on this flank here, because my Terror didn't want to give up flanks to anyone, I had to kind of leave him facing this way. He wants to fight, so I had to push him upwards. I've left him in the front of all the units that are in any threat, apart from that unit. Now, the reason I've offered the flank here, I'm trying to tempt my opponent to get greedy. So, what I want is for those guys to charge in the flank there, and for my opponent to then think, yep, it's a flank charge, that'll do it, and then charge this unit into the dogs, creating 2 one-on-one engagements. And I don't think 1 unit in the flank would be enough to kill the Terror. So if my opponent does get greedy and goes for both of them, that is the dream. So that's why I've brought the dogs into range as well, hoping that my opponent will send 1 on each. But the bait is not taken. Those 2 units go into the Terror. So obviously if they fail to kill it, that's a nightmare, because I'll probably kill both of them next turn. But with two lots of attacks in the flank, one in the front, they should do it now. Soul Flayers get killed at the next attempt, and Void Lurker takes some more damage. Scarecrows take a bit more. Ravagers take damage from the Gargoyles because they're only defense 4. And then the other Ravagers here are killed by the Knights, as you'd expect, and it's still not looking great. And also, the Terror is killed as well by those two regiments. So the dogs are going to be able to kill a unit. The Void Lurker will hopefully kill another unit. The Gargoyles are going to die. The Ravagers will then turn to face the Knights, because this unit can't fit past the Scarecrows. The Scarecrows will countercharge the Tortured Souls, see if we can kill one unit. If I do, I'll probably just go sideways to keep them blocked off. So, into my turn. The Void Lurker is doing the business, but I forgot to roll its regeneration this turn, so if it dies next turn, that's going to be annoying. Dogs also get a kill. Ravagers get a kill. Scarecrows do not. So, it's looking still the same. I'm just running out of units faster than my opponent is because he's just got so many of them. I've killed 6 Tortured Soul units and there's 4 left. Turn 4. Crunch, crunch. Cavalry getting there. I think the Souls and this hero, whose name I can't remember, finish off the Void Lurker. Possibly as a result of me forgetting to roll for its regeneration. Tortured Souls into the doggos, do 4 wounds. Ravager's dead. Scarecrow's dead. Yeah, so it's definitely game over, but see what I can kill. I think I actually did, yeah, there we go, it was 10 wounds I did rather than 4. But I rolled a 3 on the nerve check, so they lived. And is the Portal of Despair going to make it out the game? The dogs are not, they get killed in the next round. Portal of Despair trying to take some units down with him. And then turn 6, everyone piling into the middle for the Abyss, and Portal of Despair dies as well. So there we go. And elements of that game were going okay. The Void Lurker was killing whatever it hit. It was just that the enemy were able to kill my units in one go as well, and I just had less units. So, what would be a good strategy for that game? It's dominate, so you can't sit right in the corner and expect to ever make it out to contest the scenario, especially when the enemy have got so many units that can double up as chaff to just block you in for most of the game. So yeah, what would you do? You're up against a lot of speed, 10 of these very fast, flying, decently fighty units that you don't want to give up flanks to, but occasionally you may. Because there's 10 of them, eventually you're going to give up a flank, aren't you? So yeah, very tricky. I think that's quite a potent list. Would it be as potent against certain other armies? Maybe. Maybe not everything. What would be a good list to go up against that, do you think? Audience, let me know either in the chat or in the comments. What do you like? What would you like its chances against these guys? What kind of list? On to the next round. So Forces of Nature again, and very different though because there's no water elementals. There are 2 fire elemental hordes. Earth elemental regiment with Orb of Towering Presence, so they get extra unit strength. Greater air elemental, which is obviously considered the filth at the moment, even though it's not that ridiculous really. I think the issues with it are compounded by the weirdness of the rules at the moment. So, with the lack of disengaging or withdrawing an inch, these units that are on a square base are much more powerful. When they're fast as well, they're fast, tall, and nimble. When you combine all those things with being on a square base, they're one of the few units that can still do weird things like the old corkscrew charge. So, that kind of tips them over the edge into being very, very good, because their overall stats they're okay. 10 attacks on 3s, push 1, thunderous 1, only defense 4, dash 18 nerve, so that's obviously good. Pathfinder is nice to have, so it's mainly just the fact that their square base is it's a way out of a lot of the rules that hinder other units in the game. You see it with anything that's on a square base, but it's especially noticeable when they are also nimble and they're very fast. They can cover a lot of ground with a charge. We've got a druid with Gnome Glass Shield, Bane Chant and Heal. We've got another Druid with Heal and Veil of Shadows, which could be useful against me. Give a bit of stealthy. Forest Wardens, 2 of those, one with Bane Chant and Surge, one with just Surge and Inspiring, so not much Surge between them really. And then there's a formation that gives, I think it gives Brutal to the Elementals and it gives them regeneration. So Air Elementals are greater 1 and 2 hordes of regular Air Elementals. So 11 units to my 10, 1 less unit strength than me as well. And it's control in the last game. So, my opponent has set up in a little brick here, which presumably is a Veil of Shadows plan, because you want everyone to be within range of the caster who's casting it, so everyone becomes stealthy. I've gone for a very different approach. I've completely spread out, apart from this little ball of death in the middle. So I've got these 2 bits of terrain here, and what I would like to do is funnel the opposition into there, shoot them to death. I've got the Soul Flayers to charge out if I need to, because they can see over the Ravagers. And then I've got some fast stuff out on the flanks. I've got the dogs over there, I've got the Void Lurker here. The Scarecrows are going to be a good one for holding an area with their unit strength. As with their unit strength 3, the enemy are going to have to send something away from the main battle line if they want to try and counter that. And the Portal of Despair will be a good one to keep alive for the end of the game because he's very cheap. Keeps offering me an inspiring source throughout the game and then can score a table section. So if you're not familiar with control, it's divided into 6, and the central area opposite you, so your opponent's half, that one is worth 2 victory points to you, and every other section, all 5 of them, are worth 1 to you. So, how confident am I feeling going into this game against lots of air elementals? Mixed, I would say. Because I think the greater elemental's very good, but their defense is not great. And giving them regeneration, in theory, is very good, but I do have a unit with Fire Oil, and they're defense 4. So when you hear a defense 4 unit, and you've got a Ravager Horde with Fire Oil, so you're going to be on Piercing or Crush 2 against them, suddenly that starts to sound a bit juicy. And Succulent, in the air sense, so maybe something that comes out of an air fryer, that level of succulence. So, during the first turn, the enemy push everything up in just this brick. I gave away the first turn in this game, and my opponent was curious to know why, and it was because I don't really want to get that close to them yet. They can't do much to me in the first turn, I can't do much to them in the first turn, and because it's control, I want to be the one that dances into different table sections at the end of turn 6, because we know there's no turn 7. So I think that's quite a big advantage in this scenario to go second when there is no turn 7. You know exactly what everything's worth and which section they're in. Unless they're kind of straddling the line between the 2 sections, which is kind of weird to set up, especially when all your scoring units are the kind of things that you want to be fighting here. I've got some units, mainly the Scarecrows, that I don't care if they fight or not, and the Portal of Despair. So they're going to be good line straddlers, because I can spend the whole game setting them up in a good position to strike in the final turn. The rest of the units in the game really want to be setting up for the fight. So, at my turn 1, I throw up the flanks and I've got a nice encirclement going. So the dogs looking out there. Oh, by the way, there is a bit of Wind Blast in the opposing army on the greater air elementals. So it's Wind Blast versus Wind Blast and Enthrall on my side. So Portal of Despair moving up here. Scarecrows are not in any rush because really they just want to get to the centre line, turn sideways, dead on the line, and then they can control one of these 2 sections at the end of the game. Void Lurker just staring down the flank. If the enemy wants to push forward, feel free. If they don't, I'll just pull them forwards and shoot them. So you can see I have enthralled the small unit of Earth Elementals forward and then shot them. I've moved my Terror up to this building and I've put the dogs staring threateningly into the flank. So, actually I don't think I've shot them yet. I pulled them forwards but I didn't shoot them. So I was hoping if I pulled them forward a bit further I could get some shots off on them, but I didn't pull them far enough. I don't want to move closer because I do not want to be charged by fire elementals on a hill. So I want to do shooting damage. I'm not going to go and approach that hill at all. I'm going to stay back, pull the enemy forward and shoot them. That's the plan. turn 2 for the forces of nature. So the 2 air elementals come to this side, and the greater ones, because they want to wind blast my dogs out of range. The first unit goes, pushes them away, but they land in the perfect spot, or anyone who uses 2 sources of wind blast or 2 sources of surge knows that there's occasionally a nightmare spot you can leave them in after the first one, where they're not in the position you want them to be, but they're also out of range of the second caster, which is exactly what happened here. So the first one went, pushed them back. I'm not sure exactly how far it was. It could have been 3 or maybe 3 inches, but that took them out of range to be wind blasted by the other elemental, but they're still in charge range of the flank of the fire elementals, so just dropping them off in the nightmare position. Now that's happened with my surge casters before, where the first surge caster accidentally gets 1 inch too far on the surge, and then the second caster then can't target them anymore because they're too far away. So it does happen when you're trying to double cast on the same unit like that, when you're not certain what spot they're going to be in when you're doing the second cast. So I now have options. I can now charge the flank of these fire elementals with the dogs, or the terror, or both. I'm also going to be trying to pull this unit forward again, the earth elementals, and shooting them up. Now, they have the highest defense, so why am I going after them? Because they're in the middle. That's really the only reason. This unit I can't really pull in range of me, and if I do, I'd be putting myself in range of some of the other units that I don't want to be yet. So I'm going to go for this unit because they just happen to be in the centre. And they are killable, even though it's defense 6. So turn 2 for me. We've got dogs and the terror into the flank of the fire elementals, kill them, and now stare at the enemy. So the greater air elementals here, with the position they're in, one of them will have the option to jump over the top of the dogs, turn round, and then be surged into their flank. Because it's got a 10-inch move, it can land about here, and then do 2 pivots, and then look at their rear. So I've accepted that that is a thing, but I've got them in such a way that the terror can't suffer a similar fate, because they would have to use their first pivot to turn to face him, and then fly over him, and then they would only have 1 pivot left. So he's not in danger of that right now. Only the dogs. So I think that's an okay trade, because I'm now into the enemy, and I'm about to start causing some major problems. So you can see that I've deleted the earth elementals, so that plan worked a treat. Pulling them forward, and then shooting them up with all my ravagers, who have got into this little area here between the 2 pieces of terrain, pulling them into this choke point. Now, the unit with the fire oil, I've identified them as the unit I want to keep alive, which is why I didn't put them lined up to go through the gap, because they're the ones I want to survive, because later on in the game there may be air elementals with regeneration still alive that I want to kill, so I'd rather have the extra piercing or crushing strength from this horde. So they're protected. Soul Flayer's not going in yet. I'm quite happy to eat some individual charges from some units here, like the air elementals on the hill, because they don't get a bonus for it. And these fire elementals have got a choice to make. Do you go for the Portal of Despair? You're going to get hit by a Void Lurker then, probably. Do you go for some of the Ravagers? Let's find out. So, the greater air elementals do exactly what I said. They jump over the doggos and stare at their rear, ready to be surged into them. And yeah, so turn 3. So one of them is going to be surged in. And fire elementals into the Ravagers. We've got the air elementals into the Ravagers. Now the reason this isn't too much of an issue is because I'm now going to be able to flank charge the fire elementals with these Ravagers, as long as the Soul Flayers get out the way, which they will do, because at the moment they're kind of blocking them in and making it unwieldy for them to pivot and hit the flank. So they're going to have to fly off first, but assuming they don't kill the Ravagers, I'm going to have a nice juicy flank there. The doggos are dead, but they got what they came for. They killed the unit of fire elementals, and now they're dead. The Terror gets hit by the air elementals from back there, and does actually become wavered, which is a really good result for them. They do really well there. And 4 wounds onto these Ravagers from the air elementals there. 9 damage done to this unit, and they actually become wavered. So they just survive there with a waver, And yeah, because of the staying stone, it's a very small area that you can actually waver. It's only if you roll a 17, or 17 in total with the roll and the damage, that you can waver them. So you can see the Wailing Shadow on the hill there. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to probably put the Soul Flayers into the flank of those air elementals, because that just seems like a good thing to do. The Void Lurker is not going to charge any of the heroes or any of these things, because I do not want to get hit by double air elementals. So I'm going to keep the Void Lurker as a threat, keep it alive for now, and start throwing these in as well. So I've got them, they can go in. The Wailing Shadow can go after this individual as well, just to get in a juicy position. Because everyone's going to be fighting now, so the enthrall isn't going to be a big deal. Turn 3 for me, so the air elementals get flanked and killed by the Soul Flayers. The Wailing Shadow goes after this unit here, and does a little bit of damage. 4 damage to be precise, and wavers it. Now, here's a question. Someone should know this. When you are engaged to another enemy unit, or to one enemy unit, can you then change facing on your turn and stay in the same spot? Because obviously you could pivot and move away. If you were nimble, you could pivot and go backwards, for example, if you wavered. But in this situation, this unit is not nimble. Can it change facing and remain touching the Super Banshee? Because I've seen conflicting reports on this a lot. If no one has a good answer here, I'll just go to the Kings of War Fanatics group, because it's relevant for anything that you can surge. So it used to be that you could just spin round on the spot with, for example, Greater Obsidian Golems with my Abyssal Dwarves, and just surge directly backwards even if you're engaged with a unit in the front. Is that now a thing you can only do if the tournament is using the withdraw 1 inch rules, or whatever it's called? Is it called disengage? Move an inch away. Is it something you can do while staying within an inch? Over here, you can see that the Terror regenerated loads of wounds, by the way. And look at this, so the flank charge does not actually kill that unit, only 9 wounds. So they're hanging in there. And it's looking really good though. I'm very confident I'm going to win this game at this stage. These guys do not kill. Oh, hold on. So, yeah, we're on to the enemy turn now. So we've got the Greater Air Elemental into these guys. It's one of those. That one, I think, comes down here to attack them, and the other one goes into the flank of the Terror. These guys get healed quite a bit, actually, and then they're going to try and finish off this unit of Ravagers. They're already heavily wounded, so we've got 1 unit down. 2 units down, so suddenly it's not looking quite so great, because we've also got the Terror gone as well. But I'm still feeling good, because I can take out this unit. The Soul Flayers are going to be able to pin something. The Wailing Shadow is going to be able to pin something. Those things in the corner there are dead. So really, it's only... How many scoring units has my opponent got left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I kill this one, down to 4. If I kill that one as well, everything that's left for my opponent is only worth 1 unit strength. So it's going to be very, very difficult to win the scenario, because I've got the Portal of Despair, which is good for holding a section. I think it's currently in this one. And the Scarecrows, who can hold either of these 2. So I'm still feeling pretty good, despite that not going too great. Would have liked to have killed them with the flank charge, ideally, but now we're down to 1 unit of Ravagers. On to turn 4 for me. So the Void Lurker decides to go in with the double charge and kills off the Fire Elementals. The Wailing Shadow into the Air Elemental, and the Soul Flayers into that Air Elemental. Some damage is done, but not enough to kill. So, because these guys are nimble, and they can see over what they're fighting, and they're very fast, they are still going to be able to charge my units, which is why I haven't turned to face any other direction, because it's going to be able to go and because this one is actually in the flank, I'm a little bit stuck there. So what else could I have done? I don't know if going backwards would have actually helped. I might well have still been in the flank, because this unit's going to be able to come out here and charge into the flank there. So all they have to do is touch the corner. We've got Cameron in the chat. Hello there. And then this one is going to be able to pop out and go and charge probably either of those, because they get 2 pivots, of course, being nimble. So square base and nimble, it's a very good combo. So what else can do that in the game? We've got the likes of, I'm thinking of maybe things that don't fly, like Lycanis, for example. The werewolf is on a square base with nimble and is fast. So that's the kind of unit that can also do this. It used to be anything that was just nimble had a chance at it, unless you were a ridiculously wide unit, but now it's only squares that can do it, because you can't go back an inch first. If you fly, it's easy to pull off, but it means that you probably would have been grounded anyway if you're in that position, so it doesn't make a difference. So turn 5, 1 air elemental into the flank of the Void Lurker, and the other one into the front. So I think whichever way I turned, that would have happened. And this guy here, is it a Warden, goes into the flank of the Soul Flayers. I'm not that concerned there. Does a bit of damage. The Void Lurker is dead. So there is damage on these 2 air elementals, and they're only defense 4. So, what is my plan here? Do I charge in the Portal of Despair? No. The Soul Flayers are going to countercharge up there. The Ravagers with Fire Oil. So, as I said earlier, this is the unit I wanted to keep out of the action the most, because these guys both have regeneration, I think. So what I want to do is swizzle round, face that way, blast this dude, put the Wailing Shadow here, and then if I don't do that much damage, and I think it's going to survive, I'll then enthrall the elemental towards her, 1 inch, and fight it, and then hopefully kill it with her 5 attacks. If I do tons of damage and get it to death's door, I'll then enthrall this one instead and try and do damage to that. So let's see how it goes. Scarecrows are just positioning themselves happily just to end the game on the centre line so they can pick which side they want. Turn 5 for me. So the Soul Flayers don't kill the Warden. However, 1 elemental is shot off by the Ravagers, and the other one I'm then able to focus on, because I think I got it up to double 1 with my shooting. That Fire Oil, very, very useful, because I'm wounding on 2s against it now. So the Wailing Shadow gets this guy up to 5 wounds, and the Portal of Despair doesn't really have anything going on. My opponent is down to 3 unit strength, the Greater Air Elemental and 2 Wardens. I currently have the Ravagers that are worth 3, Scarecrows that are worth 3, the Soul Flayers that are worth 2, but they might die, and then the Portal of Despair that's worth 1. So it's still looking very in my favour, the scenario. The Scarecrows haven't needed to get involved in the game, but they're probably going to win it for me anyway. Turn 6 for my opponent, so final turn, what can he possibly do to stop me from winning? Well, he chooses that he's going to try and kill the Soul Flayers, and does do it. And sends a hero into the Ravagers, who I can ignore because it's not mighty, and it doesn't do any wounds with its 1 attack. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult. There's not much you can do to stop me winning here, because I currently hold my own territory there, which is worth 1. I hold this area here, which is worth 1, and I hold this area with the Scarecrows, which is worth 1. So I hold 3, my opponent holds the centre home area, which is worth 1, and then this corner, which is worth 1. So if I do nothing, I've still won. But I want to kill things. So what I'm going to do is move the Ravagers forward and try and shoot the Elemental off. And then by doing that, that actually puts them into the enemy home area. So I would then bring in the Portal of Despair as well to put my unit strength in there up to 4, which is more than the enemy have. And in fact, I wouldn't even need to do that because I don't think this guy's in there. I think he's in the corner there. So it's just these 2. So as soon as the Ravagers get in there, that means that's enough to take it. So, turn 6, Ravagers go in, shoot him. The Wailing Shadow pulls him towards her. The Greater Air Elemental does more wounds and is dead. So, clear victory there for the Nightstalkers. Pretty pleased overall with the plan. I think once I saw that my opponent was setting up in kind of that solid brick for the Veil of Shadows, that allowed me to get into those good flanking positions, and the dogs did some good work. They got right in amongst the enemy. So even though the dog unit and the Terror ended up getting killed, there was that one turn where I took off the Fire Elementals and shot the Earth Elementals, and it was just causing havoc in the enemy lines. I had the Void Lurker staring down the flanks for a long time before I decided to throw it in to finish off a unit, and I was just consistently able to just kill things over the course of the game. I did lose a lot of units as a result of the flank charge here not killing the fire elementals, which is not a guarantee that it should, but you would think you've got a decent chance because, let's see, so hitting in the flank, you should do 18 hits there on average, and they were then crush 1 against defense 5, so you'd expect 9 wounds, and I think I only did 6. So yeah, you'd expect to be in with a good chance of killing them. So I ended up having to throw the Void Lurker away, killing them when they could have already been at death's door, because they got quite nicely healed up as well, I think. So good game to end on there. Just 3 games at this event, only a small one, and again, it is for charity, this event, so I think it raised about £200 for Nottinghamshire Hospice, which I've linked in the description if you want to look down there. I've also put a link to a current Kickstarter that's going on for Bad Squiddo. Of course, Annie of Bad Squiddo Games being my housemate. So, if you want to go and back that for some ghouls, some wild, wild ghouls. Who doesn't love ghouls? I love ghouls, so I've backed it. You should go and get some ghouls as well. And what are my thoughts on these units that I tried out? The Shadowhounds are now not a chaff unit. They're now a very hard-hitting, very long-range punch unit. You give them a little upgrade on them, suddenly they're very scary. And because they're only classed as a regiment, then you can actually give them some of the better upgrades, like the Sharpness +1 to hit or Elite. And it's cheaper than putting it on a Horde, of course, because they're only a regiment. So, speed 10, very good. You could get multiple regiments with different upgrades on them if you want. I think Helm of the Drunken Ram is a good choice because it's inexpensive, and you want to make an unhindered charge with them anyway, which is when Thunderous Charge is at its best. So, you're doubling down on what you want to do with them in the first place. So I think that's a good choice, but equally you could just give them the extra crushing or elite or any of those other items. Would be equally useful, I think, just a bit more expensive. So I like them. What do I think of the Terror? I didn't really get the best out of it because I think most of the armies I faced at this event didn't have the juiciest of targets for him to feast on. And since there's only one, it's not that difficult to stay away with your infantry. And when he does get in, he's decently hitty. He's not as survivable if you get him multi-charged. Obviously, you can take him off in one round, only being defense 4. And with his regeneration 4+, you want him to survive. So you should really be putting him in a position where he's not going to get murdered in one round with a multi-charge. So I think this list maybe wasn't the best place for him because I was spreading quite thin. I didn't have a lot of units. So maybe when you're building a big front line, the Terror is a good one for that because you can maybe set them slightly further back than the rest of the front line so they're not getting multi-charged. And if one thing does go into them, it's very unlikely to kill them. And then you're going to regenerate the wounds back. So maybe just a solid front line of Terrors is a way to go. Just having one running off on their own, getting flanked and double charged isn't the best way to use it, but wanted to try them out. The Wailing Shadow and the Ravager combo, the 3 hordes of Ravagers, I think were really, really good. One with Fire Oil made a big difference for a very, very, very cheap upgrade. And yeah, I really like them. It's a lot of points though. The Wailing Shadow did a decent job. It's just a big points investment and you lose the ability to take a lot of fighty units as well then. Because they're not that fighty. I mean, they're not bad at it. Hitting on 4s with 18 attacks with Crush 1, it's okay. It's not quite as good as Butchers, but the shooting attack I think makes up for it. They are a bit more expensive though. And you don't need to put most of the upgrades that I used on them. I just had points left over and didn't have anyone else left to upgrade. So, I like them. Portal of Despair I feel like is a must include in the Nightstalker list. It's only 90 points. If nothing else, it's just a good, difficult to shift piece of chaff Titan who you could put tokens on or use to control a table section. So, I like it. Left the Bloodworms out. I was finding them a bit underwhelming actually, even though they've got a great reputation. They tend to be easily avoided because you can't have lots of them. They're so expensive, the legion of them, and they're scary. They can make them hit very hard, but just a big unwieldy block like that, it's sometimes difficult to get them where you want them, and the enemy can avoid them or just throw chaff at them. So, still good though. They didn't find their way into this list, neither did Mind Screeches or Dreadfiends or Shadow Hulks or Reapers or Needlefangs or Phantoms or any of the other units that I've got. My Nightstalker army is actually the first army I've got, I think, that pretty much fills up 2 entire cubes in my Kallax unit. So that's 4 shelves worth of Nightstalkers pretty much. And in fact, I think the only other army that does the same thing in terms of filling the Kallax is my Age of Sigmar Stormcast Eternals unit. And obviously you'd expect them to take up more space because they're on round bases and half of them overhang the base. So it's not a true representation of how much space they fill. Nightstalkers and Kings of War units are obviously more compact on their nice squares that fit together neatly. So it's a lot of units I've got for this army. There's a lot of options I have, which is why at the moment I'm working on some Abyssal Dwarf units to give me more options for that army. I like being able to take different units a lot. I don't want to take the same list over and over and over again, and Abyssal Dwarves have been running essentially the same kind of list for the last few years now. So I've got some more Grotesques and some more Half-Breeds on the table that I'm currently painting, so I'll be able to take some faster Abyssal Dwarf lists with maybe no golems. Wouldn't that be wild? And we'll see how that does, because I've got some other ideas up my sleeve there involving some other lesser used units in the Abyssal Dwarf list. We'll see how spicy that is. I'm going to have a quick look at my list of upcoming tournaments now. So, let's see what I've got coming up. We have got the next Kings of War event that I'm booked in for is early November, and then after that, early December. So, I'm constantly on the lookout for more events though. Just those 2 in the calendar for now. And then we've got Age of Sigmar for the end of October, and Dead Zone for the beginning of December. And then Age of Sigmar again right at the end of December. So, a few different tournaments lined up there for the next couple of months. And after that, it's looking free and clear. So, looking for things to sign up for. If anyone knows of any Kings of War or Age of Sigmar or Dead Zone events, or Dreadball for a matter of fact. So this event, I was actually going to play Dreadball. But so, when I initially signed up for the event, you have the choice of Dead Zone, Dreadball or Kings of War. And I said, well, you know what, put me tentatively down for Kings of War, and then if it's not a ranked event, it doesn't excite me that much then if it's not ranked. So if there's not enough players to make it ranked, I'll play Dreadball instead, because I never really get to play Dreadball at tournaments. And then as the time approached, it became clear that the Kings of War event was not going to be ranked. But with the number of players for each system, it would have meant people switching around. So I decided, you know what, I'll just stick with Kings of War. And it'll be some nice, juicy, tactical content for the channel as well, and I'll be able to try out some new units. So I would have liked to have played Dreadball, but I also had a good time getting the old Nightstalkers out. I would like to play a Dreadball tournament at some point soon, though, and I really want to get my Z's on the table again in that game, because they're undefeated in competitive competition, a 100% win rate, which I think accounts for, how many games is that? It's 6 or 7 wins that they've got, and 0 losses and 0 draws, which was first place at one tournament and second place at another tournament. And the only reason I didn't win that one is because 2 of us won both of our games and there wasn't time for a 4th round. So they've got a 100% win rate, and I would like to get them back in the competitive arena again. The Z's will reign supreme. In terms of Dead Zone, you haven't seen too much of that on the channel lately. That's because I've been running more events than I've been playing, and I've run 2 Dead Zone events in the last few months. One of them was very recently, and that went quite well. We had 14 players for that one, so that was nice. I'm running those in Nottingham. I'm looking at doing another one around about probably very early January. So, because I'm actually running the event and going around checking and doing the various rules queries and taking pictures and whatnot, then I don't have time for necessarily doing live streams of the games or too much video. But I will try to get something up on the channel about the Dead Zone tournaments I've been running, because I came up with a scoring system that I'm fairly happy with. There's some issues with any scoring system, but I think mine takes away some of the problems I have with the usual Dead Zone scoring. So I'd like to talk about that on the channel at some point, and tournament scoring in general could be a good topic for a discussion. Because what do you reward in tournaments when you're putting together a pack? Do you reward just winning the game and that's it? If you look at sport, for example, that's pretty much it. You win a game of football, you get 3 points. And then when they're breaking ties, then they start to look at other stats. Do you heavily reward killing? So I've seen events where the majority of points that you get aren't actually from winning the game. So you could lose games or draw games and still be rocketing up the table because you're killing lots of stuff. And I'm less of a fan of that. I kind of prefer you just get a straightforward set amount for winning a game, so that even if you just squeak out a win at the last second, you still get full win points. I think that feels pretty good. And then using things like overall victory points and kill points as tiebreakers is what I'm a fan of. And for Dead Zone in particular, the one thing I tried to stop was people artificially extending the length of the game so they could score more points. So they would like avoid winning so that they could continue scoring more points in the next round, which I tried to stop. You don't really have that issue in Kings of War because the game doesn't stop when you hit a certain threshold of points. That's not the way it's scored. So, might be a good topic for discussion. Scoring systems in general, why people make the choices they do in the tournament packs, and what each aspect of it was trying to accomplish. Like, we want to reward this particular thing because this is how we want people to play the game, or we want people to build lists a certain way, so we're going to reward this. Or whether people just don't think about that at all and just throw it together on a whim. I'm sure that's been done. So, Gamers for Life, some money was raised for the charity linked in the description below. If you want to make a donation to it, feel free. Also a link down there to the Bad Squiddo Ghouls Kickstarter, which is about to end in the next 24 hours. So if you want to back that, get some ghouls, got to be on there quick. Don't forget to check out all the other links as well, all my various social media. There's Twitter, there's a Discord server, the Facebook group, and obviously if you want to keep this channel as the beacon of light that it is during these dark, turbulent times in the wargaming world, then feel free to just pledge all your life savings to me, either PayPal down there or there's Patreon as well. Either way, give me all your life savings so that I can attend even more tournaments. Because I think I only made it to a piffling amount of like 25 last year. That's pathetic. Surely you want me to go to more tournaments than that. Tournaments is really where all my money goes, by the way. That's kind of the only thing I spend money on outside of miniatures. So, time to wrap this one up. Let me know what you thought of my list. Let me know what you thought of the enemy lists and just the overall matchups. What you think would be a good army to face off against that very, very interesting 10 Tortured Souls regiment list. What do you think could beat that? I want to hear all about your thoughts on that particular list, because that's something I'm pondering right now. And I think that's everything. Yeah, so feel free to comment, don't forget to like the video obviously and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I think all that remains to be said at this point is good night out there.